Let's dive into the recent seismic shift in Turkish-Kurdish dynamics. The dissolution of the PKK after 46 years of conflict, an event that's left many scratching their heads, and questioning everything.
Absolutely. It's a development that challenges decades of entrenched conflict and raises so many questions about what really lies behind this historic move.
Right, the PKK officially declared that they had fulfilled its historical mission, moving from armed struggle to advocate for democratic politics and peaceful engagement with the Turkish state.
Yeah, that's a pretty dramatic shift, considering the intense violence and the loss of over 40,000 lives over nearly half a century. It's like an entire chapter closed suddenly.
Exactly. And one of the most striking aspects is the pivotal role of Abdullah Öcalan. Despite his near total isolation in prison since 1999, his ideological evolution really influenced this decision.
Right, his shift from advocating independence to promoting democratic confederalism is fascinating, isn't it? It almost seems like his isolation might have given him a whole new perspective.
Yeah, it's like being cut off from the world forces you to rethink everything. And his call to disband the PKK, even after 26 years in captivity, shows he still held sway over the organization.
That retained authority is a huge factor here. But what about the timing? May 12th was loaded with symbolism, aligning with previous peace initiatives.
Right. That date wasn't randomly picked. It seems deliberately chosen to echo earlier attempts at reconciliation, which makes many wonder if there were backdoor negotiations, or even secret agreements at play.
Exactly, and there are competing theories too. From Erdogan's political calculations to secret negotiations and even international pressure, the backdrop is incredibly complex.
Yeah, let's break that down. One intriguing theory is that President Erdogan was looking to cement his legacy as a peacemaker. By resolving this conflict, he might be paving the way for constitutional changes that extend his rule.
I get that, but don't you think that's a bit of an oversimplification? I mean, the complexity of the internal PKK debates and how divergent Kurdish perspectives are, especially between urban and rural communities, adds layers to the situation.
That's a fair point. While some see it as a neat political maneuver, others from the Kurdish side, especially the younger generations and diaspora, seem to be pushing for a real political transformation rather than a mere tactical pause.
Absolutely, and the media narrative is split too. Turkish government channels are painting it as a decisive victory against terrorism, whereas Kurdish media are focusing on the potential for actual democratic reforms.
Right, and then you have international players like the US and the EU throwing in their weight. For instance, increased US diplomatic engagement and huge economic partnership deals from the EU seem to have nudged both sides towards a settlement.
Exactly. The international pressure element is huge. NATO's strategic recalibration in the region also plays a role, especially with Turkey wanting to shift focus on other pressing matters, like Eastern Mediterranean security.
Right, and if we think about it, the economic factors also had a major influence. Ending a conflict that cost over $1 trillion over 46 years is a huge relief financially for Turkey.
Yeah, and the regional economic development package aimed at southeastern regions points to a broader strategy of not just military victory, but also economic stability and opportunity for improved living standards for Kurds.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to note that unemployment in Kurdish areas was nearly double the national average before these changes. So, resolving the conflict could open doors, ideally, to enhanced regional development and even tourism.
But let's not forget the role of intelligence operations. Turkish intelligence had been making significant strides, targeting PKK leadership with precision, which likely disrupted the organization's internal structure and finances.
Right. The MIT's operations targeting high-profile PKK commanders between 2020 and 2024 seem to have weakened the PKK considerably. The infiltration of their communication channels probably stoked internal tensions.
Yeah, that intelligence game is a critical piece of the puzzle. It not only affected military operations, but also the internal bargaining power within the PKK.
Exactly. And speaking of bargaining, Öcalan's prison conditions have been a long-standing issue. There's some speculation that improved prison conditions, like increased access to books and more communication, might have been used as leverage in broader negotiations.
That's right. Any small concession in his treatment could be a signal of a hand extended by Turkish authorities. It's like giving a little carrot to get a much larger concession politically.
Yeah, and on the subject of negotiations, there's also talk about backdoor talks where Turkish intelligence might have had undisclosed meetings with PKK representatives. The promise of cultural rights and political representation were reportedly on the table.
True, and while both sides have publicly maintained plausible deniability, the whispers suggest that these secret negotiations could be a game changer in shaping future Turkish-Kurdish relations.
Right, and let's not ignore the Syrian Kurdish factor. The situation in northern Syria has always been a pressure point, with groups like the YPG pushing forward Öcalan's ideas in Rojava.
Yeah, the dynamics in Syria and Iraq, where Kurdish forces were carving out quasi-autonomous regions, definitely pushed both PKK and Turkey into rethinking their strategies.
Exactly. The shifting alliances in the region, including the roles of Iran and Russia, mean that this dissolution isn't just a Turkish internal affair. It has broad, regional implications.
Absolutely. And then there's the Kurdish diaspora, whose support, both political and financial, has been critical over the decades. Their growing influence in European politics definitely tipped the scales towards peaceful and political resolutions.
Right, the diaspora's shift towards advocating for democratic processes rather than armed struggle really highlights a generational transformation within the Kurdish community. It's like a quiet revolution driven by new values.
Mm-hmm. And that generational shift is key. Younger diasporans, having grown up in Western education systems, often prefer engaging through political channels rather than conflict.
Right? And then we have the Turkish opposition's concerns. Parties like the CHP and HDP are supportive of peace, but remain wary of the potential for Erdogan to consolidate power under this new pretext.
Exactly. There's a legitimate fear that these moves might be a smokescreen for strengthening his grip on power, undermining the very democratic reforms that are being spoken about.
Right. And that brings us back to the media narrative. While Turkish state media celebrate the end of an era of terrorism, Kurdish and international outlets cast a skeptical eye over what's really being achieved.
Yeah, the battle of narratives is fierce. One side frames it as a victory for counterterrorism, the other sees an opportunity for real political and cultural advances, despite historical precedents of broken promises.
Absolutely, and it makes you wonder, is this dissolution a genuine path to peace or just a strategic pause before a new kind of conflict emerges?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because while many are hopeful for a transformation in Kurdish rights and political representation, others fear that the root issues might just be reconfigured rather than resolved.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. The future will depend on converting this moment into genuine and sustainable peace, one that addresses deeply the socio-economic and political grievances that have fueled the conflict for decades.
Mm-hmm. And considering the diverse perspectives, from internal Kurdish debates to international geopolitical dynamics, it's clear that the road ahead will be as complex as it is promising.
Absolutely. And as this dramatic chapter closes, the true test will be whether this initiative paves the way for reconciliation, democratic reforms, and lasting stability in a region that's seen so much strife.
Right. It feels like we're witnessing history in the making, and only time will tell if this bold move transforms the long-standing conflict into a new era of peace and cooperation.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that major geopolitical shifts rarely come without their fair share of controversy, debate, and unexpected twists. It's definitely a moment to watch closely.
For sure, this conversation just scratches the surface of a very layered narrative. Thanks for breaking down these complex dynamics. It's been an enlightening discussion.
Anytime, it's been great to unpack these intricate stories together and see how far we've come. Yet, how many questions still remain.
Absolutely. Here's to hoping that the future brings clarity and genuine progress for all parties involved.